Qatar has been ruled by the Al Thani family since the early 1900s, when it was controlled by the British. On July 17, 1913, Sheikh Abdullah bin Qasim Al Thani became the ruler of Qatar. At the time, Qatar's primary industry was pearling and fishing. The country at the time was dealing with widespread poverty, malnutrition, and disease from the collapse of the pearl trade in the 1920s. In 1939, oil was discovered in the city of Dukhan, but development on the field was slow until 1949 because of World War II. While the oil discovery was great, it was nothing compared to the natural gas reserve found 30 years later. In 1951, Qatar produced 46,500 barrels of oil a day, amounting to $4.2 million in revenue. The discovery of offshore oil fields led to an increase in production to 230,000 barrels per day. Then, Qatar began a slow modernization process. The country's first school, hospital, and power plant, and even telephone exchange all opened in the 1950s. Oil revenue steadily increased through the 1960s as the Al Thani family grew stronger by placing relatives in high government positions. However, oil production is not expected to remain at its peak levels of 500,000 barrels a day because of the oil fields are projected to be mostly depleted by the year 2023. But Qatar has natural gas reserves to compensate for that. Qatar's reserves of gas are the third largest in the world. Qatar's reserves are estimated to be at 896 trillion cubic feet. In the year 1971, the world's largest natural gas field, the South Pars North Dome gas condensate field, was discovered off the coast of Qatar. But the crash of the oil prices in the 1980s stopped the growth of the economy. By the year 1995, the situation in Qatar had not improved until Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani took power in a coup, and then Qatar became a very powerful force. Hamad saw that keeping a low profile could be dangerous and set a whole new direction for the country. So how exactly did Hamad raise Qatar's profile in the world? What he ended up doing was pretty big. So first, he let the US set up its regional military headquarters, the Al Udeid Air Base, outside the capital city of Doha. The partnership with the US military has given Qatar a new level of security. Hamad then went on to integrate Qatar into the global economy. He built the world's largest facilities for condensing liquid natural gas and began exporting liquid natural gas for the first time. Following that, over the past 15 years, 14 liquid natural gas plants have been built in partnership with international oil companies. In the late 1990s, Qatar entered in production sharing agreements with several international oil companies. And in 1996, for those of you who keep up to date with anything to do with the news, well, you probably know about this. Hamad launched Al Jazeera, which is a 24-hour news station that combined aggressive reporting, high production value, as well as an Islamic worldview. Al Jazeera became huge, and the purpose of this organization was really about enhancing Qatar's visibility as well as its influence. But the channel has gone on to be one of the most important broadcasters in the whole Arab world when it comes to news. Qatar's GDP has skyrocketed over the past 15 years thanks to steady oil production and high natural gas production. In regards to planning for the future depletion of its oil, well, Qatar has taken measures to diversify its economy. In the year 1998, the government built Education City, which is a huge campus that supports 6 American and 2 European universities, as well as research centers. Qatar has a sovereign wealth fund of $170 billion. Then in the year 2005, Qatar established the Qatar Investment Authority to recycle oil and gas income into other income streams. In other words, it was set up to buy a lot of things around the world and thus reduces the country's exposure to the oil price. In London alone, it owns Harrods, the Shard, the Chelsea Barracks site, the US Embassy, and the Olympic Village site, among many others. It is also the largest shareholder in Sainsbury, which is just over a quarter of the business. And check this, guys, it also co-owns Miramax Films after purchasing it from Disney with a group of other investors. The Qatar Financial Center was built in 2005 to develop Qatar's financial services industry. The country believes it can become a financial services leader for the Gulf states thanks to its relative stability and large base of capital. In 2006, Qatar passed Indonesia to become the largest exporter of liquid natural gases in the world, with revenues from oil and natural gas amounting to 60% of Qatar's GDP. But more competition was coming, with liquid natural gas production booming in places like the United States as well as Australia. And then in December of 2010, Qatar was selected as host of the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And because of that, Qatar promised to build 12 state-of-the-art stadiums that would employ cooling technology so players could escape the heat. Qatar has positioned itself as a sporting hub for the region, hosting or planning to host numerous global sporting events. And last June, it was alleged that Qatar spent $5 million on bribes to secure the 2022 World Cup bid. Switzerland is now opening an investigation into mismanagement and money laundering related to Qatar's bid. So there's still quite a bit of controversy going on there, but hey, Qatar has really set itself up powerfully to be a powerhouse nation in the world. Starting at number 10, we have Iran with a GDP of $19,098 US. The economy of Iran is a mixed and transition economy with a large public sector. It's the world's 18th largest by purchasing power parity, and about 60% of the economy is centrally planned. Turkey comes in at number 9 with a GDP of $25,286.60 US. The economy of Turkey is defined as an emerging market economy by the IMF. And now Turkey is among the world's developed countries, and that's according to the CIA fact book. Turkey is also defined by economists and political scientists as one of the world's newly industrialized countries. But ahead of them is Malaysia, coming at number 8 with a GDP of $28,176.40. Malaysia is a Southeast Asian country occupying parts of the Malay Peninsula as well as the island of Borneo. It's known for its beaches, its rainforests, and a mix of Malay, Chinese, and Indian as well as European cultural influences. The capital, Kuala Lumpur, is home to colonial buildings, busy shopping districts, and you'll find quite a bit of skyscrapers there as well. And moving on to the nation of Oman, they come in with a GDP of $36,830.90 US. Oman's proved reserves of petroleum totals to about 5.5 billion barrels. And natural gas has increased a lot due to the development of gas fields. Oman's natural gas reserves are estimated at 849.5 billion cubic meters, ranking 28th in the entire world. And Oman's mineral resources include gold, copper, zinc, and iron. Now, several industries have grown up around them as part of the national development process, which have provided jobs for many people in Oman and have contributed to the nation's GDP as well. The citizens in the country enjoy a pretty good standard of living. Next up, we have Bahrain, and their GDP sits at $41,973.30 US. Bahrain is regarded as one of the fastest growing economies in the Arab world, and back in the year 2008 actually, the country was named the world's fastest growing financial center by the City of London's Global Financial Centers Index. Bahrain's banking and financial sectors has benefited from a regional boom driven by a demand for oil. Now, petroleum is Bahrain's most exported product. Aluminum is considered as the second most exported product, followed by finance and construction materials. Number 5, we have Saudi Arabia with a GDP of $48,995.60 US. Saudi Arabia has the world's second largest oil reserves, and oil accounts for more than 95% of the exports as well as 70% of the government's revenue. It also has the world's 6th largest natural gas reserves, and the country is planning to launch 6 economic cities, which are planned to be completed by the year 2020, so this year. We're going to be seeing a lot of changes in Saudi Arabia, and 6 new industrialized cities are intended to diversify the economy of Saudi Arabia. The nation at number 4 is United Arab Emirates, or UAE, and they have a GDP of $66,615.90 US. The United Arab Emirates banks on its oil as well as its gas for about 25% of its GDP. In the country, petroleum and natural gas exports plays an important role in the economy, especially in Abu Dhabi, its capital. people. Now, a gigantic construction boom and expanding manufacturing base are helping the country really diversify its economy. Getting to the bottom of this list, Kuwait comes in at number 3. They have a GDP of $67,969 US. Now, it's a country with an estimated population of about 3.5 billion people. Kuwait is one of those countries that are relatively unknown by a lot of people. People just don't know much about it. But Kuwait has proven crude oil reserves of 104 million barrels, estimated to be 10% of the world's reserves. Kuwait's oil production is expected to increase to 4 million barrel units by this year, 2020. And other major industries in Kuwait include shipping, construction, and financial services. Kuwait has a well-developed banking system, and the National Bank of Kuwait is the second largest in the country, and also it's one of the largest in the Arab world. Brunei comes in at number 2 with a GDP of $71,802.50 US. Brunei is a country with a small yet wealthy economy that is a mixture of foreign and domestic entrepreneurship, government regulation, as well as welfare measures and village tradition. Not much to say about them, but they come in pretty solid, and that's why they're at number 2. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough to be number 1, because that goes to the country of Qatar with a GDP of $112,531.50 US. The Gulf state with overpopulation of 1.7 million is at number 1 as the world's richest Muslim country. The country is recognized as one of the fastest growing economies in the entire world. Now, the main catalyst for this rapid growth is said to be the ongoing increasing in production and exports of natural gases, oil, as well as petrochemicals. And Qatar was also hoping to host the 2020 Olympic Games. Unfortunately, that went to Tokyo. Now, it's been a very high-profile investor in recent times. The government is also pouring a lot of money into infrastructure, including a deep water seaport, as well as an airport, a railway track, and also they're investing a lot to make the country a better place, especially for when the World Cup happens there in the year 2022.
Getting right into it, number 10, manufacturing and workforce. Now, Germany is a country that works hard. As a matter of fact, the term German efficiency is what comes to mind when we think of manufacturing and workforce. Not only do their products last, but the term slow and steady wins the race applies to Germany. Because back in the 1980s and 90s, Germany was criticized for not jumping on the dot-com and internet bandwagon, unlike other countries, and kept focusing more on manufacturing equipment. But however, when it comes to Germany, it's their small and medium-sized businesses that offer demanding products that are key to the economy. Now, these small companies manufacture equipment that is built through highly specialized means, making the machines that they build important for construction purposes. Number 9, adopting the euro. Now, of course, the euro is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, dollar and currency on the planet. However, if the country didn't adopt the euro during its time, the Deutschmark would have become an extremely costly dollar to convert to. And by taking on the euro, which wasn't as strong as the Deutschmark, this allowed Germany to sell and export their products at a cheaper price to many countries around the world. Number 8, spending what one can. Now, Germany has a great philosophy where they do not spend beyond their means. And it's not just people, it's also their government as well. And because Germany's been very good at keeping their interest rates pretty stable, it's allowed them not to borrow money on rainy days. And this might seem like a very old school way of doing things, but keep in mind Germany's been through a lot of rough times in the past, so they've learned to keep their money and hold on to it and not spend it if they really have to. Number 7, labor and unions. In 2003, the country had labor reforms that strengthened the protection of employees. And during this time, while the world had a worldwide recession from the year 2000 to 2003, a government program came in where many Germans were happy to work fewer hours to keep their job and continue working on their skills. Now, this same program was instituted during the 2008 economic crisis, and of course, this program is slightly funded by the government to help keep small businesses alive. And as well, on top of that, their unions have been a great contribution to the country's success. And because of all these reasons, it's kept their people working and, of course, kept all their businesses alive. And as a result, for 2017, their unemployment was only at 3.6%. Number 6, community. In the 1980s and 90s, many of the jobs were considered very local, which actually meant most jobs weren't really considered major corporations, which is actually quite beneficial for the country. And because their jobs were on a smaller scale and usually in small communities, it meant that employers had to respect their employees and had obligations to them. And what's even crazier about this, in these small companies, employees actually can sit on the board and they can also make decisions for the company. And what this results to is that people who work these jobs generally feel valued. So that means when an economic crisis comes around and they really got to pinch the pennies, at least people feel valued and they feel appreciated and they're not being lied to, so they stick with the job in the first place. Number 5, Volkswagen. Let's just face it, Volkswagen is one of the most popular car companies in the world, and they always make reliable machines. As a matter of fact, in 2012, it won the best car company in sales, and in 2016, it made record sales despite the Dieselgate crisis. And it's just a powerful company that makes a lot of money that really puts it towards Germany's, economic growth. Number 4, resources. Now, Germany is a very lucky country because it's got all the resources it pretty much needs to build the things that it makes. For example, it has a lot of resources like timber, natural gas, coal, uranium, iron, and ore. And what makes this very good is that companies within the country don't have to spend a lot of money on importing these products into their company, or better yet, they don't have to spend money on a lot of transportation fees, so they can use these resources to build with. Number 3, these people are traditionalists. Now, what is great about Germany compared to other countries is there is very little unlimited competition in trades. Where in Germany, there is much respect for a person who still makes things by their hands. And because of all this, like I said earlier, their products are generally meant to last because they are cared for much more. Number 2, cheap entertainment. In Germany, one thing to notice is that entertainment is generally quite inexpensive. For example, the Bundesliga Sport League has the lowest ticket cost in all of Europe, and actually has the highest audiences. Keeping entertainment cheap makes people happy and lets them afford other things. And number 1, education and intelligence. Now, as I said before, when we think of Germany, we think of German efficiency. And when it comes to education, efficiency holds true, as their education is not only free for its citizens, but for international students as well. Many will ponder and ask why and how a social system like this works, but Germany understands that working together will make everyone improve. And in 2017, it was ranked 3rd in the world for education, and because of that, they were ranked 47th in the world when it came to employability. Either way, that is just some of the reasons of why Germany is a very rich and powerful country. There are many other things that make Germany an amazing country, but I always like to look at it from its traditional roots because I feel like if you've got a good mental vibe, then you can accomplish